Hello, everyone, and welcome to Boston Balling. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut. It's almost the end of the week, so congrats to everybody on making it to almost Friday. I know I myself have had a very long, very busy week, so I'm definitely excited for the weekend, excited to relax. I know where I live, we're supposed to get a bunch of snow tomorrow, so anybody that's driving, please be safe in that because the weather is all over the place here. It was 70 degrees yesterday, and now it's going to be snowing tomorrow. But I'm used to that. That's just how it is here. That's just how the winter is. So everyone, be safe if you are going somewhere. I know I'm going to be staying inside my house. So I hope everyone's doing well, though, having a good week. I'm really excited for this episode. I have a really great guest with me today. He does excellent baseball coverage for Fox. He used to play baseball himself. His brother, Justin, plays for the Astros. So a big baseball family they have going on over there. Ben Verlander, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Yeah, I mean, like I said, big baseball family you have over there. Baseball's a great sport. It's my favorite sport. It's definitely fun. I mean, I wish I could say that I am looking forward to the season, but obviously that's all up in the air still right now in terms of that. And we'll get into all of that too. But before we get into that, why don't you just tell people a little bit about like yourself, a little bit about your baseball story, how you landed where you are now?
Yeah. Obviously, my name is Ben Verlander. I played baseball in college at Old Dominion University, where I actually was a two-way guy. I played outfield and I pitched. And then going into my junior year, I made the decision to stop doing that and just focus on one and chose to hit pretty much just because I liked playing every day instead of once every few days. So it worked out well. Became an All-American my junior year and got drafted by the Detroit Tigers, where I played for 5 years, and played in a couple All-Star games there in the Tigers organization, and then finished up about 3 years ago, and always wanted to stay in baseball. It's my as with you, it's my favorite sport, and I love it. And despite playing it for so long, I never fell out of love with the game. And then this job with Fox Sports came along. I came out to work a World Series watch party a couple of years ago, actually. Well, two World Series ago with Rick Ankiel, Tino Martinez, and Nick Swisher.
That
And it went
sounds so
really
fun.
well. And it turned into a full-time job. And now here I am with Fox Sports. I have my own show, podcast as well, called Flippin' Bats with Ben Verlander. And yeah, I'm about to head into year 2 of this job. So I love it. I love playing professionally. I wouldn't trade it for the world, but I absolutely love where I am now and just spreading the joy and the happiness and showcasing how fun this game actually is.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like there's nothing better than being able to cover the sport you love on a regular basis. I mean, like, who wouldn't want to do that? I feel like that's everybody's like dream. Like, whatever you're passionate about, like being able to be involved with that every single day is probably just so rewarding.
Yeah, I love it, and I never take that for granted. And I worked really hard to get where I am and to get where I was in my baseball career. And I always struggled along the way to actually find actually be proud of myself. Just, my brother's 9 years older than me. He's obviously super successful, and it's always going to be hard to, brothers and siblings are always so competitive. So for me, it's almost impossible to reach that level. So no matter what I did in my life, I was always like playing it down and like, well, this is nothing. So every once in a while, I just need to step back and appreciate where I am and realize, like it's pretty cool to be able to do this. I might not be winning in the grand scheme of things with my brother, but I'm really happy with where I am and how hard I work to get here.
Yeah, and honestly, everybody's path is different. And I feel like success is defined so much differently with everybody. You know what I mean? And I feel like you kind of ended up where you're supposed to. And, being able to cover the game and put out such good content for people, I feel like it's kind of more what you're meant to do as it is.
I agree, and it's funny. The first time I ever met with my now boss out here with Fox Sports, I told him that, and I had never actually said it before, but I was like, I really feel like I was put on this earth to talk about baseball, even when I was playing. And obviously, my dream and my goal was to play Major League Baseball for as long as I could. That didn't happen, but even when I was playing, it was yeah. I love this game, and I don't ever want to stop talking about it. And I really do believe I was put on this earth to talk about baseball and to show how awesome this game is. And to be honest, Gabby, for so long, the game of baseball was talked about. So like it was all the same. It was a bunch of older guys that were like, well, back in my day. And it doesn't need to be that. This game is so fun. You got guys like Tatis and Shohei and Acuna and all these guys that are so fun. And that's kind of what my whole thing is all about. And my whole show is just showcasing how fun the game of baseball is and sharing my love of the game with people that also love this game.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting you bring that up too, because I feel like there definitely is a generational thing when it comes to that. And like the way people look at the game is so much different now than people who are in, a couple of generations above me, kind of. Because even on social media, like on Twitter, baseball fans are so diverse in terms of, age demographic and all these other things. And you have people who are a lot older than me who were watching baseball, obviously, well before I was even born. And I just feel like the game has changed so much since then. So it's always interesting for me to see those different perspectives in terms of like how one person views a game versus how somebody else does. It's just vastly different now. And that's what's really cool about it. And a lot of these young players are making it so much more fun now.
Yeah, but that's what's important is the game needs to evolve. And I love baseball. It's America's pastime. And I think all these people, and you're right, generations that are older than us, they grew up going to baseball games and taking their kids to baseball games. The game needed to evolve from that. So you see those same people now saying, well, the game's different. Like, look at this guy flipping his bat and, strutting around the bases. And it's like, yeah, the game is changing because the world is changing as well. And you look at social media and how guys market themselves. And that's so important, in my opinion. Like, that's what the game of baseball needs is more guys like Tatis on Instagram and all these players on social media and doing fun and exciting stuff. And it's what the game needs. But there is definitely older generations that I don't want to say are trying to hold the game back. I think they're just trying to hold on to what the game was when they grew up with it. And I understand that, but it's also this sport needs to evolve, and it's better for the game that it is evolving the way that it is.
Yeah, I agree with that too, because if the game wasn't changing, you're not going to appeal to the younger audiences and even younger kids, younger than me, who are like growing up, striving to play baseball and do all these things. It's like if the game isn't changing to kind of, accommodate all of these other changes in society, like you're not going to be able to have that connection from the younger baseball fans. You know what I mean? And that's one of the other things that's cool about it is you can kind of see those changes as they happen.
Yeah, exactly. And the game needs to be fun. Like and baseball for so long was if you do something good, put your head down and round the bases or put your head back and put your head down and get back on the mound and get ready for the next batter. And it's like, well, at some point you need to celebrate. Like you need to have fun doing what you're doing. And we see it now and we see it with kids, with the younger generations playing the game. Like you can go out to a little league field and see kids wearing the Fernando Tatis glasses and the arm sleeves and doing everything that they see these guys doing now. And that's what makes younger generations fall in love with the game of baseball. The game of baseball would be fine if it just stayed still and stagnant for a period of time. But at some point, to appeal to the younger crowd that also sees football, where you score a touchdown and you can do a dance in the end zone, you make a three-pointer and you can do your own little thing running back down the court. Baseball needs that. You hit a home run, do something fun, do something cool, flip your bat and round the bases. And now that the game is doing that, you're seeing it appeal and you're seeing it, happen in Little League where guys are literally emulating what they see on the field. And I think that's what's going to be so good for the game of baseball going forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's just those cool things that like people like to see that are not just the standard, like going through the motions of watching a game. Like, oh yeah, like somebody strikes out, somebody hits a home run. Like, yay, we see that so much all the time. But it's like, yeah, these unique other things that these players are doing, or like TikTok worthy moments during games. Like that's the type of stuff that the younger generation enjoys. You know what I mean? Like even me, like I'm a Red Sox fan, like a huge, huge Red Sox fan, and like they did their little like laundry cart celebration like
That's
last
great.
year after all of like after that, you know what I mean? Like so that
Yeah.
was cool to me to see like every time somebody hit a home run and like they came back into the dugout, and like that was a cool thing for fans to be able to see and be able to talk about. And I feel like doing unique things like that is going to keep people engaged.
It's great. And that's a great example, like those guys would do whatever you want out on the field. They're flipping their bats, they're rounding the bases, and then you get in the dugout and all cameras in the entire stadium go to the laundry cart because you
Because
all
they
know
know.
what's coming. And it's so fun and it's so cool. And it creates these viral moments that kids growing up will remember. And I'm sure kids in Boston would have a little league game and have a cart in the dugout and emulate what the Boston Red Sox were doing. And then after games when they would win and they'd play dirty water in the locker room and like have so much fun with it. Like that's the stuff we need to see and that baseball has needed. And I'm so thankful that it's heading in that direction.
Yeah, me too. And especially right now with everything that's going on right now and like because the direction overall that baseball was trending in was upward. And so it's good that because if it was staying stagnant and we were at this point now, it would be really, really hard after this whole situation now to kind of continue to grow that audience. But now, over the last few seasons, really, it's been a lot more of like those types of things. Like that's just one example, what I brought up about the Red Sox, but like if more teams continue to implement stuff like that, more people are going to want to watch the games. Because I have friends who are like, yeah, I love football, I love basketball, but they're like, I can't sit and watch a baseball game. Like they find it to be too like boring. And I'm like, not for me, but like those types of cool things that teams and players are doing that people can kind of relate to more is going to make them, want to watch the game more.
Absolutely. The people that love baseball are people that love, watching the game within the game, everything going on. But to appeal to an entire different audience, you need the stuff that is going on in the baseball world now. And like, oh wait, this guy hit a home run and then like chucked his bat and like stared down the pitcher and like people love that stuff. And that's what the game has needed. And I agree, the game was heading in such a good direction, which is, one, what makes this lockout so tough. But two, what makes it okay is I have no doubts that when the game is back up and running, it's going to be right where it left off. And it's in a really exciting place and time right now. And that makes me excited for whenever this is going to end.
Yeah, which is like super upsetting. And I mean, there have been some changes recently. I mean, for example, like the universal DH, like what do you think of that idea?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Like for every one time that a pitcher would do something cool, there's a million instances of them going up and looking like they're the least athletic people on the planet. So nobody wants to see that.
That's so true.
And I also don't like, Jacob deGrom, who's probably the best pitcher on the planet right now, got hurt last year doing something at the plate. Like, I don't want that to happen. Like, the odds of him doing something good, like the pros don't outweigh the cons, and the cons vastly outweigh the pros. So I'm fine getting rid of it. I was kind of like, I didn't really care. It's also kind of cool that the two leagues do something different, but it's not worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's such a good point too, though. The injuries are obviously the number one thing. It's really not worth a pitcher getting injured when you need that player to stay healthy for the season. It's like, is it really worth it to watch them hit? You know what I mean? And then also the other thing is like I feel like in a way it kind of takes away from a little bit of the competitiveness at the plate because you see a pitcher step up and everyone just assumes that they're going to strike out or like, you know what I mean? Or something like nobody assumes that they're going to come up and do something big at the plate anyway. So it's like, is there really a point to them actually hitting from that?
Yeah, my brother's been in the American League his entire career.
Yeah.
And he's talked to me about this multiple times. And this is for a while why he was thinking and hoping like, hey, man, I wish I was in the National League, because a pitcher comes up and you're kind of on the mound, like you can take a breath, you can exhale, you can take a breath for a batter. Whereas my brother, for the majority of his career, a great example is instead of having that pitcher come up, you have David Ortiz come up. And it's like the complete opposite. Like, okay, I can't take a breath here. Here's the DH who's perhaps the most clutch hitter, who is the most clutch hitter of all time and a force at the plate. It's like, that's a big, big difference.
Yeah, it's probably a lot. The thought process is probably a lot different from a pitcher. If you look at somebody like David Ortiz stepping up to the plate versus like another pitcher, like I can't imagine like how it's so vastly different. I can imagine like that mentality that pitcher has on the mound at that point,
Yeah, it's worth about a full run for an ERA for a pitcher. So a pitcher in the National League has about a full run of an advantage facing a pitcher every 9 batters, as opposed to, the DH is typically one of the better hitters on the team. So when you think about it, it's a really, really big difference between the two leagues.
That is such a good point though, because that's that like I haven't always thought about it like that, but you're so right though, because
Yeah,
there's always that one person in the lineup where the pitchers in the National League can kind of be like,
yeah,
okay, I can relax a little bit, whereas they don't get that in the American League, or they just have to for the whole lineup deal with people who actually hit on a regular basis.
yeah.
So that's such a good point. And yeah, I mean, I like it. I think it's going to be I think it's going to create a lot more kind of competitiveness in the National League from that standpoint. And it'll be interesting to kind of see how people react to that, like fans of National League teams.
Yeah, it's just going to be different. And that's kind of why I was on the like, I don't really care. Like, if we had to make a decision, I'm glad it went this way, just, for injury purposes. And like, there's not enough good things that happened. In fact, like, nobody wants to watch a pitcher go up and like try and bunt and mess it up and then swing and miss at a strike three. Like, it's not fun. So I don't really think, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference for the game. I think we'll all come around to it pretty quick. It's just going to be a little bit different, but like I said, I'm definitely on board with it.
Yeah, and then that was one of the other things too. It's not like it hurts the game either way, regardless of what they decided. You know what I mean? From that standpoint, it doesn't really make a difference either way. It's just different.
Right, 100%. It definitely doesn't hurt the game. It doesn't help the game. It just like, in a way, I guess it does help the game because we'll get to see better hitters. The game, offense is fun. So is pitching. So I'd rather see more offense when I can, and I'd rather see Jacob deGrom not get hurt when he doesn't have to.
Him of all people too. It's like, I mean, come on. Like, I want to see a full, like real, like full healthy season of this guy. Like
100, and he's actually not probably the best example because he can actually like do something at the plate. He can actually hold his own and like hit a little bit. But for every Jacob deGrom, there's nobody else. Like, anybody else.
DeGrom is just really on his own planet when it comes to pretty much everything.
Right. I mean, he was hitting like 250 when he went down last year with a bunch of RBIs, and like whenever he got a win, they would win 1-0, and he would drive in his own run.
Like, what can exactly? It's like, what can the guy not do, really?
Right.
But yeah, that's such like, you know what I mean? That's such a common thing for the Mets though. When he was pitching, every time he pitched, it was always those like 1-0 games because they could never score for him either. So
yeah.
That's just how they always was. It always was like that every time he was pitching.
The Mets are gonna Met, but you never know now. Like it at least seems like they have, they get Scherzer. Hopefully deGrom's healthy. I mean, no matter what team you're a fan of, like there's certain guys you just want to do well when they're at the top of their game, and a few that come to mind. One being Mike Trout, one being Jacob deGrom, one being Shohei Ohtani. Like no matter what team you root for, you want to see the best of the best healthy. And obviously, if you're a fan of the Red Sox, if your team goes to play the Mets, you'd rather them not have to face Jacob deGrom. But when you do see him, it's going to be exciting to watch, and you're going to see something special.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'd prefer to just avoid him altogether every time we do play them. But like, luckily we don't face the Mets that much, but still it's just like, yeah, I mean, he's a fun guy to watch. Like I enjoy watching him pitch. And I mean, he's one of those players that no matter who you like you said, you can appreciate his game and appreciate how talented the guy is,
Yeah, certainly.
But yeah, no, that I'm kind of with you on all of that. But this other one was kind of, I bet there was a lot of mixed thoughts on this last year, which was the whole extra innings runner on second base thing. That one there, definitely I was a little conflicted on that at first because I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like this is kind of weird because like you just give up like a single and the run scores, but then it's like the same with it's the same thing at the bottom of the inning. Like it still applies to everybody, but it's just like, does this really do much? Like, does this really shorten the game, or do they just go back and forth, like continuing to score those runs? And then like it kind of started to grow on me as the season progressed, and the more games that I watched where that was implemented, it started to grow on me a little bit. But where were you at with that one?
Yeah, so I would say I'm kind of in the minority here. And this is from somebody that used to play, and one of the teams I played on in the minor leagues, I feel like we went to extra innings every single night at one point, and it gets exhausting. So my thought on this is that I don't hate it. I actually didn't mind it, but I wish it didn't start in the 10th inning. I wish there would be a couple of innings where you could just play it out like normal. have the ninth inning. If the end of 9 innings you're tied, have the 10th inning, have the 11th inning, and then maybe in the 12th or 13th inning start to do that. At the point where the game really gets like, okay, when is this going to end? Then do something drastic like that. I didn't like seeing a full game, a full 9 innings be played, and then immediately in the 10th inning, it's like, all right, runner on second, let's do this. Totally different. I would like to see the game go a little longer, and then after a few innings, maybe do something that that could affect the game or allow runs to score more easily.
Yeah, because if you just let the teams play and let it play out for at least a couple innings, like one of the teams still could score even with nobody on base in that inning. So it's just like, okay, yeah. And if things continue to go back and forth, or like both teams still score and you're still sitting here and you're looking at like the 12th or 13th inning, then it's like, yeah, this is going to be a little too long. Like, especially the games earlier on in the season where it's like, this is not worth risking like people getting injured in April when we are going to need these guys in like September. You know what I mean? So from that standpoint, yeah, like something probably does need to be done for like the later parts of the game, because it's almost like, what are you going to let it go? Like 18 innings? Like that's like 2 full baseball games.
Right. But, and that's what, as a player, I just wanted it to be over with. Like, to be honest, it didn't matter at that point. It's the dog days of summer. It's the middle of the year. Just get this game over with. So, yeah, I'd be fine with that. But from a fan perspective, like, there's always that fun part of the game going like 20 innings and watching everybody out on the field be miserable that it's not over and swinging for a home run and it not happening. And then you just end up with a 20-inning game, and it's like, you're just sitting behind the screen, like laughing.
Yeah. And seriously, like, is this ever going to end? Yeah. I remember one time I went to a Red Sox Yankees game at Fenway, and it went 16 innings. And like, I thought that was long, but I enjoyed it because I was like, wow, this is so much free baseball for me. Like, I loved it. But like the people I was with started to eventually be like, can we go now? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, is this ever going to end? And I was like, no, I need to see how this plays out.
That's right. It's always fun getting free baseball.
Yeah, because I was like, I don't want to leave now and then have something big happen in like the next inning. Because knowing me, that is what would have happened. So they were not happy with me, but I convinced them to stay because I wanted to know what happened.
That's great.
Yeah, no, I just love the sport, and like I'm just like, if I'm at a game, like I'm not gonna leave before it ends. I just can't do that.
Right.
Or I remember the Red Sox Dodgers World Series, that 18-inning game, and I was like, that was getting super late, and I was like, I need to go to bed. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, is this game ever gonna be over? Like, at all? Like, and then eventually, finally, obviously, it wrapped up, and I was like, that was literally like 2 full baseball games that we all watched.
Yeah,
like, this is
literally
absolutely ridiculous. Like, I love the Red Sox that I need to go to sleep.
Exactly. So enough of, that's what that gets rid of, is those long, like, crazy games.
Yeah, no, I definitely see where you're coming from, for sure. That's an interesting take on it too. And I feel like if they kept it, yeah, like maybe just at least give it through like the 10th or 11th inning, maybe,
Right.
and not just like abruptly be like, okay, we're putting somebody on second right now. But yeah, no, I mean, even with this season, like, it's hard to even really pinpoint like some people, because I've been talking to some people and they're like, when do you think that we're going to have baseball? And I'm like, I wish I could say that. I really, really wish I could say that. But like, what do you think? Like, do you think that like there's hope that they're going to figure this out soon, or should we just expect to just have to wait for however long, which who knows how long that's going to be?
Yeah, I think they figure things out sooner than later. This is how it goes. They're now meeting every single day for longer, and more people are in town. So the urgency is finally ramping up. They're not exactly close, but you see that all the time with negotiations, no matter what it is. You look at the trade deadline, and when it comes up, you hear they're not very close, and then a day later, it's like a deal's done. And it's like, wait, I thought they weren't close. So once things start to happen, there are vital points that haven't been touched on and that haven't been, one side or the other isn't budging. Once you start getting a little movement there, everything's going to happen really fast. I think once they start talking about the CBT, and not to get too into the weeds here, but the CBT is the competitive balance tax, which is the major issue at play here that hasn't even been talked about as we sit here and talk now. Once they do start talking about that and getting a little movement on one side or the other, I think it'll happen pretty quickly. I don't think we're going to see a deal this week, but to be honest with you, I do think there's a chance within the next within the next week, within the next 2 weeks, we could have a deal, and that spring training could be off and running, because there's too much to lose from both sides, and I think everybody knows that, and I think it's important to think about the fans at some point, and I'm hopeful something gets done.
They have to. Yeah, they have to, because that's the other thing that I brought up with one of my friends too. I said, well, at some point they have to think of the fans, and they have to think about the game as a whole, and like how much is going to be impacted here if they don't figure this out.
Right.
Like you said, there's too much for both sides to lose, and overall, as a whole unit, they need to realize that and be like, wait, yeah, like this is going to be a serious problem if we don't figure something out. So they're going to realize they're going to be forced to figure something out. It's just going to be frustrating to me if games have to be canceled, which it is looking at this point like that unfortunately is going to happen, and that there just isn't going to be a full season because it's too close now to that. I'm just not seeing them actually figure all of this out by Monday.
Yeah, I'm with you, but I think it'll be close. I don't know if it'll happen Monday, but I also think it's important to note Major League Baseball is the one that said there's a deadline of February 28th. Nothing is written that says, like, hey, if we come to a deal on March 2nd, we told you so, we're going to miss games. Like, if they come to a deal on March 2nd, they're going to start the regular season on time. So I'm hopeful that something will happen in that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday range, and we'll get off to spring training. And if there are games that are missed in the regular season, it'll just be a couple of games, and we'll still get about 160 games in the regular season, which would be great.
Yeah. So you're saying there's some wiggle room there for.
I think so. Like, this is a fake. They gave this deadline. It's not like there's something that, like, you can make it work. Like, we're talking about a couple. If you come to a deal on March 2nd, we're talking about 2 days. You're telling me you can make it work? Like, you'll figure.
I see what you're saying. No, yeah, that'd be ridiculous if they were like, "Oh no, we're past the 28th. Like we can't start the season on time, even though we finished this 2 days later."
Right.
That would be so insane to me. I feel like.
Right. Absolutely. And everybody wants to get it done. Everybody wants to get it done. Everybody realizes the importance of it, and everybody wants to be ready by the time opening day comes around. There's just a big gap between the two sides that needs to be figured out, and one side's going to have to give a little more than they want, and then when that does happen, the other side will adjust accordingly. And I think we start seeing that here, as we head into the weekend, like you said, and your great opening, that we're getting close to the weekend.
Thankfully. But yeah, no, that was that. I definitely, I'm definitely with you. I just hope that they can figure it out soon, because nobody wants to not have baseball. I mean, and they know they can't afford to do that anyway. So it's just a matter of, like, and the less games they have, the more it's going to hurt the game. So they know that, you know what I mean? Right. Like, that's all an acknowledgement. Like, and obviously it's not going to be like 2020 where we had a 60 game season. I don't think it's going to be to that extent, but having most games, I think, to me, would end up being ultimately like a really good scenario at the end of the day, considering all of this. Like, if they can walk away with this and still have at least most games, then I think most fans will be happy and not be complaining about that.
Yeah. And, I think it's important to say that it's obviously frustrating from a fan perspective. Even the players are frustrated. Everybody here is frustrated, but it is important to, like, the last agreement that was in place that lasted years expired. So what they're currently negotiating for isn't just right now. This involves the future of the game of baseball. So it's important to get it right. And although it's frustrating, it is important that that both sides get what they feel is important. And the last couple of CBA agreements that we had were very, very owner friendly. So I think the players finally realized, like, hey, we were giving up too much, and this is our time to get it right. And to be honest, they have a lot to get right from the last one. So I don't know if they're going to get it all right this time. But it is frustrating as a fan to see baseball, like, being in this state. But I think we need to realize how important this negotiation is for the future of the game of baseball.
Yeah, and they know that. Everybody definitely knows that. I think for me, a lot of it, the frustration came from, I mean, I obviously don't know for sure, but what seemed to be a lack of urgency at the beginning when this all started. You know what I mean? Because they weren't meeting a whole lot, and there just didn't really seem to be as much of a desire to figure this out. But like you said, there's more people now that are involved, and more people are around to be able to help meet and figure this out. But it just seemed to me like they really ramped up the urgency recently. And I'm saying that's great, but where was this urgency back in December?
Right, and that is important here is the owners are the ones that locked out the players. The
Yep.
owners are the one that said, "Hey, we're gonna implement a lockout. You can't show up." And then they didn't come to the table with anything
Yeah.
for a month, 2
Yeah,
months.
exactly.
And it's like, well, okay, like I hear you. We need to come to an agreement, but then do something about it. Like they're the ones that lock. So they implement the lockout, and then they're the ones that said, "Hey, we need to come to an agreement by February 28th, or we're going to miss games." And it's like, okay, and look, with my job and I talk about this game and Major League Baseball, like I can't sit here and pick a side, but what I can look at is from the outside, like Major League Baseball and the owners implement a lockout and then they don't come to the table with anything for a couple of months, and then they say, hey, if we don't come to an agreement by February 28th, we're not going to pay you and we're not going to start the season on time. It's like, well, this isn't adding up. This doesn't make sense. You needed to come to the table earlier and play a fair game here.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, yeah, they say all of that and then they just let a whole month or so go by without really even bringing anything to the table. And it's like, well, how are you going to get anything done if you don't? And what are the players supposed to do in that case?
Right.
Because, like,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? Because nothing's being done. Nobody proposed anything. So what are the players supposed to do? And that, I imagine, probably made them even more frustrated because they were like, well, we want to play baseball. Like this needs to get done. You know what I mean?
Right. 100%.
Like I do not envy the players right now. I really don't. And that's a tough situation to be in because all they want to do is figure this out and just start playing baseball. You know.
Yeah.
But I mean, from your perspective, like, how do you think the players kind of keep themselves like motivated, in check, and ready for the season when there's still so many uncertainties with this and all of this frustration that goes along with it?
I think you have to get ready as if, it's right around the corner. And I know, my brother is ready to go. I know a lot of players are working out and ready to go. You know, the good news, if there is any in all of this, is this sort of happened during the COVID year in 2020. And
Mm-hmm.
players were kind of, you learned a little bit then and can implement that now. Like, okay, here's what I was doing to stay ready. Did that work? Did that not work? So now here we are, a year and a half, a couple of years later, and it's like, okay, what did I do back in 2020 when this sort of thing was happening? And where do I need to be physically to immediately ramp up and be ready for spring training when they say, okay, go?
Yeah, so it's kind of like that mentality of looking at it as, okay, yeah, I mean, we're approaching the season, so like we need to be ready no matter what. So then as soon as that flip is switched and they find out exactly when everything's going to be starting up again, they can just be ready to just jump right into it.
100%. Exactly.
And that's what I like about the players too, is the players have that confidence that they're going to be starting the season soon. Like I've seen players tweeting stuff like, oh yeah, baseball season's almost here and things like that. And I'm like, that's nice to see personally, because I'm like, yeah, even though amidst like all of this and all the frustration, the players are still feeling confident or at least staying positive about the whole thing that we're going to see a baseball season soon. And I think that that's really awesome because I feel like it's easy to get discouraged, but with the players and especially with the situation, but with the players, they're just like, a lot of them are just trying to stay positive and say, look, we're going to have a baseball season soon and we're ready to go for when that does happen.
Yeah, I really don't see a situation where we miss the season a bunch of time.
They can't. They know they can't. That's not an option.
Right. I think if there is games missed, it might be, a week or so of games. I don't think there's going to be a situation where we're missing half of the season. That's not going to happen. And I'm hopeful, like I said earlier, something happens here and within the week or within the next couple of weeks.
And you can tell how much they recognize that too, because of just like we talked about before with the urgency, how much they've stepped that up recently because they know the clock is ticking and they know that they can't really afford to miss a lot of games. So I think you're right. I think it's not going to be we miss a ton of games. A week, okay, whatever, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like nobody will notice that much of a difference if a week of games in a 162 game season is missed.
100%. Like, but once the season starts and we're a month into the year, you're not even going to remember it, and then we'll be good for years to come, and all will be well. Shohei will be back out there hitting bombs. the Red Sox will be pushing each other through a cart in the dugout, and we'll all be good and happy.
Exactly, right? Everybody's going to have moved on and be like, yeah, at least I'm watching baseball right now.
Right.
You know
exactly.
what I mean? I am excited for the season, though. I think, looking at last year, there were some surprise teams that came out of last year. And I mean, I'm not trying to be biased, but the Red Sox definitely were one of those teams because they definitely overachieved last year. And nobody believed me when the season started, when I said I thought that they were going to make the playoffs last year. People just kind of ignored it. But then I looked back on that afterwards, and I was like, wow, good for me for kind of knowing that, I had a feeling that the Red Sox were going to be a playoff team. I just thought they were really underrated last year. I think obviously people came out and performed a lot better than they thought that they would. I don't think anybody expected Hunter Renfroe to have the season he had in Boston. So that was kind of cool to see too. But San Francisco is another one. I mean, did not expect them to get as far as they did. Yeah. You look at teams like that and it's do you think that was just a fluke season, or do you think that the Giants can actually come back and be that competitive again this year?
Yeah, that's tough. The Giants are a tough one because nobody saw that coming, and baseball hasn't seen that in forever. Before the season, they were predicted to win 75, 76 games, and they ended up winning 106. You really never see something like that. So I think it was a combination of a lot of things. And on my show, on my podcast, I had on Mike Yastrzemski, who talked about it and talked about how great Gabe Kapler was and how good that core team was. And there was a lot that went into it. And I do think to some degree they played above what they were, what they were given. They got the absolute best out of what that roster could have gotten. And you can't say that about every team and every year. I think one team that does that every single year is the Tampa Bay Rays. You look at that roster, and every year they get the absolute best out of what they possibly could.
So
and
true.
The Giants got that last year. Are they able to do that again? I don't know. I also know they've lost a few key pieces. Buster Posey, was more than just a player on the field. In my opinion, he's a Hall of Famer, but what he meant to that team as an individual and as a person, I don't think you can quite quantify and put a finger on, and it's impossible to do so. So there's a couple big losses for them, and I'm interested to see how they do next year. I don't think it's a stretch to say they're not as good. I'm just interested to see, will they compete in that division with the Dodgers? How will that race go? There are going to be a couple teams in that division that are good, and how will that shake out? But I'm certainly interested in that. I do think there are going to be some surprise teams this year. But I was with you last year with the Red Sox. Actually, before the year, they were my surprise team to win a wild card spot, and I was with you. I thought the pitching had some work to do, which is what ended up, coming back to haunt them when all was said and done.
Which I knew.
I thought they were going to hit a lot better than most people were giving them credit for. And boy, did they do that. It was fun to watch them last year. That's for sure.
It was so fun being a Red Sox fan and watching games, because I was yeah, I mean, people are sleeping on them still. Throughout the whole season, people really were sleeping on them. And then, it gets to the playoffs and it's oh, they're going to lose to the Yankees in the wild card game. Oh, they're going to get smacked by the Rays. And then then they lost to the Astros, which I'm sure you were happy. So, but it's, it is what it is.
I mean, if they get anything close to, if they got anything close to resembling what Chris Sale normally is, you're talking about a totally different series with the Astros. They just kind of ran out of good arms to throw against a great offense. And it got to the point where you just couldn't trust Chris Sale, who was clearly not himself. So, in a series where you get vintage Chris Sale, and I'm not saying prime Chris Sale, because who knows if we'll ever get that again, but good Chris Sale, we could have been talking about a totally different series. I think, to be honest with you, they just ran out of arms to throw it to the Astros.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And with Chris Sale, I mean, people are getting really frustrated with him, but I mean, people should have kind of expected this. I mean, the guy literally was just coming off of Tommy John surgery.
Right.
The guy hadn't pitched in a while. You can't really expect him to be back to the Chris Sale that we're all used to and love when in the situation he was in. You know what I mean? I did not expect that at all from him. And I don't get why people really did, because you have to understand that there's going to be that in between period of, I really don't think he's ever going to be able to get back to prime Chris Sale, but I do think he's going to continue to show improvements and kind of start to maybe head back in that, direction. I think he's going to have a better season this year, especially if, this whole little more time to rest now that pitchers and catchers can't be at spring training sites right now. So I think that's going to be big for the Red Sox going into this season too. Like I think he's going to pitch better this year. And I think that's going to be huge for them. And obviously they made a couple pitching moves, but the Red Sox are one of those teams that like are still not done to me. I feel like there's teams like once this lockout is over, there's going to be moves made, obviously, because there's still so many free agents on the board that it's like, what are teams actually going to do? You know what I mean? I feel like it's going to be, I'm kind of excited because I feel like it's going to be this big like scramble to sign
Oh,
a
it's
player.
going to be a free for all.
Yeah, like it's going to be wild to me to see that. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. It did come down to the pitching, which is what everybody knew it was going to come down to. The Astros were a great team, obviously. I think, at the beginning of that series, it was pretty competitive too. But at the end of the day, the Astros just had, just more. They just had more. They were just overall a better team. But I really liked the season the Red Sox put together, and I love Alex Cora. I think he's a great manager, and I think the players love playing for him, and I think that kind of shows when they're on the field, and that's one of the reasons why I think it helped them get as far as they did too, because they had that passion.
It absolutely shows. I mean, Cora is an incredible manager. He knows his guys and he knows how to use them at the right time. And one thing we've seen time and time again is that he knows how to manage against the Astros. I mean, it's where he came from. You can see it the second those series starts. It doesn't matter how good one team or the other is. They know each other so well because of Cora and the connections there. And it really is cool to see them go head to head. And it was awesome to see them do it on the biggest stage. I mean, we got them in the ALCS. And if you're a Red Sox fan and we're told before the year, like, hey, we're going to make it to the ALCS, I think you would take that in a heartbeat with what everybody else was thinking. And I know they lost some pieces, but they're getting back some big pieces. And I know we were talking about Chris Sale. Give the guy a break. He was coming off of TJ and the stuff was still there. But the last thing to come back, the thing that takes the longest after Tommy John is your control. And we saw that with him. And now after some more time, it'll be back. Chris Sale will be back, and he'll be a force in that Red Sox rotation.
Yeah, I know. And then everyone's going to stop complaining about it, the Red Sox fans who were, because I'm going to be like, yeah, this is what we were waiting for. He just needs some time to get back there. And that's one of the biggest things for me. And then the other thing about them this year was that division was super fun to watch last year, because there were 4 teams that were super competitive in that division. And I was like, wow, I mean, this is going to be tough for years to come now, because Toronto, they scare me. That the Blue Jays are a good team, what they have going over there. The Rays are the Rays, obviously, and then there's the Yankees, who are always just kind of there, unfortunately. So it's the 4-team race was awesome last year, I thought.
Do we not want to talk about the Orioles or? No, I'm with you.
And there's the Orioles, but I mean
that division, I mean, became the best division in baseball, hands down. I mean, and it came down to literally the last game of the year and the last series of the year. And just from top to bottom, we touched on the Rays briefly. They're always going to be really good. And it doesn't always make sense, but they are. And then you have the Yankees, who are the Yankees, the Red Sox are the Red Sox, and then the Blue Jays, who are now this like 4th team in the mix that is honestly really hard to root against. I mean, like, I don't know if you feel the same way being in their division. Obviously, you want the Red Sox to beat them head to head, but they're fun to watch. I mean, having a guy like Vladdy Jr. up there.
I love him. He's one of my favorite players.
Exactly. Like
he plays in my division. That's the only thing, but he's one of my favorite players in baseball.
Exactly. He's exciting. He's one of the best players in baseball. And there are guys on that team that are just hard to root against. I mean, Bo Bichette is one of those guys. He's really good. He's young. He's flashy. He's exciting. And I'm sure when your teams are facing off head to head, you don't want them to do well. But when they're not, they're fun to watch. And now they're in this mix and they're going to be good again. And it's, again, in my opinion, going to be the best division in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, by all means, do that against the Yankees. Feel free. I mean, like anytime, I'm totally fine with that, but just don't do it against my team.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree with you though. I think once again, it's going to be the best division in baseball. I think it's going to be very, very similar to what it was this past year. I mean, it's just crazy to think about how there were three teams that made a playoff appearance in that division, and the Blue Jays missed it by literally one game. That to me is absolutely nuts as well. And it's like I was happy the Blue Jays didn't get there because they were a team I would have been scared to face in the playoffs. I did not want to face Toronto with the way they were playing at that point in the season in the playoffs. That would have scared me for sure. And so I
They're
kind of
one
was
of those
happy that
teams.
they
Yeah,
didn't
they're one
get
of
there.
those teams that when they get in, if they get in, nobody wants to play them. I mean, not only offensively were they dominant, but like Robbie Ray, Cy Young winner, like you don't want to face him. So let's say they did get into that wild card game. You have to face a dominant offense with Robbie Ray on the mound, who won the Cy Young award. It's like nobody wants to play those guys. So if they had gotten in, I think they could have done some damage like the Red Sox ended up doing in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's why I was scared. But yeah, they're going to be scary. They're going to be really good. And once again, I think it's going to be a 4-team race. And I mean, the NL West obviously was that 2-team race was really fun to watch because that came down to the wire too with the Dodgers and Giants. I mean, I kind of was hoping the Padres would play better than they did, though, because I feel like that would have made that a lot more fun. Like they kind of were a disappointment after everything that they did. You know what I mean? They had made all these moves, and their roster was looking pretty good. So I honestly thought that they were going to be more in the mix than they actually were.
I think they're one of the biggest disappointments that baseball has ever seen, to be honest with you. I
I
think,
don't know what happened there.
coming into it, they're a World Series favorite. They have one of the best rotations in baseball. They have Fernando Tatis, who just signed this mega deal. He's baseball's star, which that proved to be true. He was awesome.
Yeah.
But I mean, to finish below 500, I mean, with the team that they had, there was clearly more going. There's something happened. I mean, they were playing good baseball. They were fine. And then we saw that little scuffle with Tatis and Machado in the dugout, which is nothing. That stuff happens all the time. But I think it might have been a little sign of like what was going on behind the scenes. I think there was more going on than we got to see. And I just know with a roster that talented to be as bad as they were, one, that can't happen. And two, when it does, it's one of the biggest failures in baseball history.
It just didn't make sense. I was like,
Right.
this is just, I can't explain why this is happening. Like, they're talented. They have a lot of really good players over there. They were kind of set up to be a team that could make a really serious playoff run. And then they just kind of fell apart. But you're right. I think obviously that one little incident wasn't what ended up being the turning point of their entire season because that just doesn't happen. But, maybe there was a lot more going on.
Yeah.
Like, in the locker room, like other things kind of going on off the field that we as baseball fans didn't know about that kind of affected that, on field chemistry for them because the chemistry is a huge part too. And those teams that have that chemistry are a lot of times the teams that make deeper runs. And that's why baseball is so great too, because it's not always the most talented teams on paper that win a championship in baseball. A lot of times there's so many other factors that go into that. And having that team chemistry is a huge thing, which is already what I alluded to before about the Red Sox, that they were not close to the most talented team on paper, but they had like a special bond between the players that you didn't see everywhere. And I think that helped them get really far.
Yeah, you can see how much of a difference that makes in the baseball world. I mean, we just talked about it. The Giants clearly had something special there. Their roster wasn't the best in the world, but what they did with it was special. And then you have the Padres, whose roster is one of the best in the world, and they just were awful down the stretch. And it was a tale of two different teams that are built differently and have a different chemistry going in opposite directions.
Yeah, I honestly thought I was starting to think towards the end that San Francisco was actually going to go to the World Series. I was like, this seems like just some sort of crazy special year that they might end up in the World Series. And I mean, but I'm happy for the Braves. I mean, that was awesome to see them win it. But I mean, where do you think Freddie Freeman's going to end up? That's a big question too.
Yeah, I don't know. I for the longest time, even up until like a week ago, said Freddie Freeman's not going anywhere. He's
I
an
thought so
Atlanta
too.
Brave
That's what I
for
thought.
life.
Yeah.
But look, if they aren't going to pay the man what he deserves, he should go. I mean, he deserves his money, and he's done a lot in his career to earn and to be where he is. And if the Atlanta Braves aren't going to say, hey, you're our guy, we want you to be an Atlanta Brave for life, if they don't give him that respect, he doesn't owe the Braves the respect to say, hey, I'll take a hometown discount. He absolutely doesn't need to do that, nor should he, if they don't give him the respect that I think he deserves. So I'm hopeful he stays with the Braves. I want them to pay him. I want Freddie Freeman to be a Brave for the rest of his life. But I'm becoming a little more concerned that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I can't really picture him somewhere else. To me, he's just one of those players that like belongs in a Braves uniform. You know
Right.
how there's certain players that you just associate with teams and you're like, I cannot see this person playing anywhere else because that's just weird. He's kind of one of those players to me where I'm like, yeah, I mean, I did not think twice about it before. I was like, there's no way he's going anywhere else. But
Right.
now it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't blame him either. I mean, he's great, obviously. He deserves to get paid what he deserves. And if it's I mean, I think it'd be dumb for the Braves not to do that, but if they don't, then yeah, he should go somewhere else. I just hope that it's anywhere but the Yankees, like, which scares me because the Yankees are expressing interest in him too. And that, probably would happen, I feel like.
I know. I've
So
heard Yankees and Dodgers are possibilities.
he
So
can go to the Dodgers. That's fine with me because then I won't have to like face them like for all these games per year. You know what I mean? So it's like he can go there because that doesn't really affect me personally as much. It's more if
true.
he goes to the Yankees. Like I don't want Red Sox pitchers to have to see that guy all the time.
True.
But yeah, no, I think it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens over the next couple weeks because I think, like you said before, hopefully they can come to some conclusion in that time. And then after they do come to that conclusion, I think there's going to be just chaos of like trying to sign
Yeah.
players. And it's going to be really fun to see where people end up. There's obviously other big names. Like I could talk about free agency for a long time too. Like there's so many players that you don't know where they're going to go. I just thought Freddie Freeman, as of recently, is one of the biggest names that popped up because I think a lot of people thought he was going to stay in Atlanta. So that's going to be interesting. Juan Soto's another name that popped up recently. Who knows what's going to happen there too. He's another one that I was like, I can't picture him going anywhere else either.
Right.
It's going to be interesting, like to see if some of these players end up going elsewhere. So I'm excited for the next couple weeks to go down.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited for this to get over with. I'm hopeful in a couple of weeks we're done talking about the lockout, and then we're in free agency and things are going crazy and baseball's back.
I know. That's what I want. Like I just want to be able to go to Fenway Park and watch a game. Like that's so hard to ask. Like really. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly though. But yeah, I really appreciate you joining me on the show. I thought this was great. Everybody, as always, thanks for tuning in. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully we get baseball soon. And if we do get baseball soon, of course it's go Red Sox, as you all know, obviously. But I'm excited for it. Hopefully, fingers crossed, this all gets resolved soon. Thanks, everyone, as always. And I will talk to you all next time. Have a great rest of your week.